So I'm going to show you how you can have a running tally of how many correct answers a student has on their multiple choice Desmos activity. This assumes that you've got the auto feedback and a restriction of 2 attempts already set from my last video. So currently you can choose an answer. If it's correct, it doesn't let you continue attempting. If you get it incorrect, try again, great job. But I would like to know how many points I've earned as I go along. I'd like this to display on each slide. And even for marking purposes, I don't want to count the check marks. I could just kind of click on their last slide and see their percent or their total. Now this is a bit trickier and more of a hack than the feedback. So I'm going to do this for the first 3 slides just to save time. What we'll do is we're going to add a graph to every slide. Now this graph is going to be invisible. It's not actually going to be part of the question. And I'm going to name the first graph G1 for graph 1. And I would name the second one G2. And the names are important because we're going to have to reference these graphs explicitly from our first graph. So this one would be G3. And I'm also going to need a note, which is going to be the display showing the score. So I'm going to add a note and I'm going to drag it to the bottom of every slide. This doesn't matter what you name it. It doesn't need a name. The nameless note. Alright, so in G1, our very first one, we're going to add some code behind it. And on every slide, we are going to copy and paste this code and modify one thing on it. The first thing is we're setting it to hidden. So hidden equals true, because we don't want this to be part of the question or seen. The second is we have to set it to read only. Otherwise, the correct that gives that check mark, it won't register, because if it's not read only, Desmos expects perhaps a student will have to enter some equations or do something on the graph, and that you can't auto mark. But if it's set to read only, it knows the only component that can contribute to a correct answer is the multiple choice, so the check mark will still show up. Alright, we're going to set up a variable that is going to be the score for the first question. So we're going to call this number A. Instead of number 1 and number 2, we're going to use letters, because after you get past 9, Desmos doesn't let you name variables with an underscore more than 1 character, it seems. So number A for slide 1, and this part you don't need to touch, but what you will modify, so have the same copy and pasted stuff here. On slide 2, on G2, paste the same thing, but I'm going to change A to a B. The second variable that we're setting here is it's just adding, either it's making it a 1 or a 0 based on if the question has been attempted. So this will be our denominator, so that we can say you have this many correct out of this many questions tried, rather than have the denominator be all the questions on the quiz, so it'll look like they're failing until they get more than halfway done. This way it'll just mark them based on what they've done. So we'll do that one more time under G3, and I'll change this to number C, and total, meaning like total attempts, total C. Alright, and don't worry about this for now. What we will now do is in our first slide, and I just chose the first one because why not? Seems like a good one to use for a first of anything. We are going to put some code that will tally the sum of all of those n numbers, all of the correct scores, and tally all of the attempt scores, so that we will have our denominators. So I'm going to click back in the code layer for the first one, and I'm going to paste this stuff. Looks kind of big and crazy. Don't worry about that for now. The first thing that's happening here, just zoom in a bit, I'm setting this variable number A2, and this means attempt 2, I just made it stand for. And this is how many points you want a second attempt correct answer to earn. So if you want to give them full points for making it correct after 1 round of feedback, then you can make that equal to 1, and that's fine. That'll just make correct the same value for first attempt or second. I put it at a half, so that they get a half mark for trying again. And then what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing number B from graph 2, and I'm grabbing number C from graph 3. So I'm just within this graph 1, I need to declare what these variables are, so that now these are now variables this graph will notice and see. These don't exist because I didn't do all the other slides. So for now, I'm just going to comment those out with the number sign, hashtag as they say these days. And similarly for my totals, I don't have more than 3 slides registered, so I'm just gonna comment these out. Okay, so that is good. And next, close the code layer, and this time we're actually going to click inside of the graph, and we're going to do something with the calculations. So we are going to calculate using the math features of the Desmos calculator. I'm going to copy and paste some code into there that sets a variable n equal to the sum of all the other variables. Now I don't have these guys, so I'm going to get rid of those, but you can see the code that you can copy and paste goes all the way up to p, which would be 16 questions. And similarly, I'm going to add up a variable I'm going to call t, which will be the sum of my first 3 totals. So it should look something like that. Done. So what have we done? We have defined a variable that keeps track of correct on the first attempt, second attempt, or not at all. And we've done that for the first 3 slides. And then on the first slide, we've used the graph calculator to add up N1 or NA, NB, and NC, and so on. Now, why do we need to do this inside of a graph? Well, the only place we can define number variables like that is in a graph element currently in Desmos. So it's a little bit of a hack to have a hidden graph. Next, we want to display the score. So in our note at the bottom, we're going to click the code layer there, and we are going to paste the following code. So the first thing is we're going to grab the totals n and t from graph 1. There they are. And then we're going to use a simple function, and this is the LaTeX format for rounding the number of correct answers by the total number of attempts to 1 decimal place. And it expects values a and b. So all that to say is then we can set a text variable for score and basically mark that as blank if the question hasn't resolved yet. So if they haven't attempted it, or they haven't taken 2 attempts and got it wrong, or 1 or 2 attempts and got it correct, basically make it blank. But if it's ready to show, then we will set it as a nicely displayed fraction of n over t equal to a nice percent, which we are saying that percent function. So percent evaluate at n and t. So it's basically taking n divided by t, rounding it to 2 decimal places, multiplying by 100, so it's a percent. Let's see what it looks like. So let's get it wrong. Try again, and this time we'll get it right. You know what would be handy is if I had put that code, or if I had displayed something in this text box. So we haven't actually told it what to display. So here is where you're going to, down here, now that we have defined these variables in our code layer, we will click this button, which allows us to insert a value from the code layer, and it shows us all the values that we have defined. So score is what we want to display, and score is that text that will display our result. Let's try this again. We'll get it wrong, we'll try again, we'll get it right, submit. Score is 0.5 out of 1, 50%. Let's go next. Let's get this one right on the first try. Submit. Oh, right. Short memory. We should do the code under this one as well. So we'll paste the code, insert score. Good to go again.
Look at me when I hit repair. It's gonna literally mold the car into a whole new
Wrong, right,
It looks so cool.
next, right on the first
That
try.
side of my car?
There we go, 1.5 out of 2, 75%. So this will tally all your scores. You can do them in any order. You don't have to do them in order either, because it's grabbing the results of correct or not and attempted or not from every slide and summing those up in the first table and it's grabbing those results and displaying them in the note for every subsequent table. So hopefully that helps. It's a bit of a, I don't know, workaround, let's say, but it does work, and it is nice for students to see their continued updated score as they go along. I wanted this anyway, so I fought to find it. Shout out to everyone I've stolen ideas and code from out there in the Desmos community. Reach out if you have any questions, of course.